This is Paige Fisher, and I did my report on Story Champs language intervention. So, I wanted to start it off by explaining what exactly is Story Champs and what it's about. So, it's a narrative based language intervention program developed and designed to promote oral academic language through storytelling. So, it aims to foster growth in academic skills, such as recalling and sharing information, acquiring new word meanings through context, expanding each language domain knowledge, writing, and comprehending. So you may recognize this picture because I think we touched base on it a little bit last semester, but Story Champs uses a consistent set of visual icons to help children understand story structure. So they have story elements of the character, that goes with the icon, problem, feeling, action, ending. And while the exact artwork might vary depending on how you make it or the version, the meaning of the icon always stays the same. I've outlined the standard procedure step by step that most people use, but as I will touch on a little bit in the next few slides, you can modify it depending on the kid, but this is just the standard. So the first thing you do is you will model the story with the visual supports. And then the second thing you'll do is have a group retell. So each part of the story is retold by the group with the icons. So you'll go to each kid and have them retell it, have them have their icon. And then the third step is an individual retell. So one student will retell the story, and then sometimes you will play a story game. And then step 4 is you pick another individual and they retell the story. Step 5 is a new individual will generate a new story, and based on the question, has anything like this ever happened to you? And then in step 6, another person will do that exact same thing, but you will remove the icons this time. I found this article and I thought it was really important to add into this as we are talking about Story Champs and why we should focus on narrative intervention to facilitate some language development. So, narrative intervention facilitates a great opportunity to integrate pre-literacy skills. Academic standards expect children to be able to produce personal narratives and retell familiar stories. So it's a huge academic standard to be able to do this. Narratives foster more complex language, and in typical development, complex sentences emerge at age 2 to 3 years. So we're really wanting to make sure we have these at this age. And then narrative ability at age 5 predicts future academic success in primary school and in social success. So this is a big important thing to focus on in these early years. So I created a list of populations that may benefit from Story Champs. So this is from research and actually from the writers of Story Champs. So I kind of comprised it both. Story Champs is aimed for children from preschool all the way up to 3rd grade or higher, but they recommend preschool to 3rd grade. And populations that benefit are children with developmental language disorder. So they typically benefit from explicit teaching of story structure and that repetition of tasks. Children with expressive or receptive language delays benefit from building strong narrative skills, and it helps with their vocabulary and syntax. Another huge population is English language learners. They benefit from Story Champs because it builds vocabulary, it supports that oral academic language needed for future academic success, and it helps a lot with background information that they may need to understand and comprehend these stories. Children with autism spectrum disorder, Story Champs includes predictable routines, and the stories within it focus a lot on social skills and perspective taking. Another population is students at risk for academic failure. So strong, as I said in the previous slide, strong literacy skills predict later reading and academic success. So getting these kids into Story Champs at an early time translates oral language to written narratives. And then lastly, children with learning disabilities. So this builds reading comprehension and improves reading and writing skills. Another thing I liked about Story Champs is it can be adapted for all ages and populations. So the main levels that they focused on was there was a level A, which is basic story structure. So this focuses on the 5 story structures. It's highly scaffolded, shorter stories, lots of repetition, lots of those visual icons and gestures, simple vocab, and minimal writing. And then if your kid is improving and you're seeing a lot of success, you can move up to level B, which is more of an enhanced story structure. So you can focus on basic story structure plus 5 more components, longer narratives, more inferencing and elaboration, more independence, and then more tier 2 vocab and more complex syntax, and the written expectations gets higher. Going into the practicality and the feasibility of Story Champs, I kind of listed the pros and cons, thinking more of the school mindset, but this can also be applicable to outpatient or private practice, any of the other ones. So pros are the lessons range from 15 to 20 minutes, so shorter time. Stories are created around childhood themes, so the buy-in is a lot better. Intervention can be given in small groups, large groups, so the whole class, or one-on-one. It's a very predictable routine, so students are able to follow structure and know what's going to come next. Materials are all included with the package or can be made and reused. We can adjust prompting. It also coincides with the curriculum at schools along with the multi-tiered system, so that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 system. And then data taking can be used with scoring sheets, and it's easy to track progress maybe on an IEP. Some cons is it's pretty expensive if you buy the package. It's between $460 to $509. You must group students appropriately. So if you have like a high level and then a lower level, they probably wouldn't be in a group together. So you have to group them based on what level they're at. And then it's not comprehensive for all language needs. So it only focuses on a little bit of one or the other, which I will touch on more in the research aspect. I found a lot of information on cultural and linguistic variability within Story Champs. I'm going to take this quote directly. They reflect everyday events that young children are likely to experience, like misplacing your shoes or scraping your knee, regardless of differences related to your language, culture, or ability. So this reduces the need for the child to use background knowledge, and it provides a comfortable context to learn something new and difficult, such as new vocab or complex language. It emphasizes visual and icons and not a lot of words, and it's built on universal narrative elements like character, problem, feeling, action, ending. So I found this article that very well supported Story Champs, and the main findings from this article was children showed significant growth in story grammar. They showed many benefits for CLD learners, so I kind of took that from the previous slide. And then they also showed a increased use of complex language. So they used more complex words such as after, before, when, because, etc. And then it was very feasible in the school setting. So that was the findings from this study. The next study focused a lot on the multi-tiered system, so that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 within the schools, and it found that Story Champs is effective within the multi-tiered system and boosts oral language skills. So this study used whole class, tier 1, and then small group, tier 2 instruction, and they put at-risk students who received tier 2 intervention in one group, and then they had a control group. And the students who received that tier 2 intervention with Story Champs outperformed at-risk peers who did not receive that extra support. And then there was improvement seen in narrative retell, personal story generation, and expository retell, so those factual stories. This last reference kind of went against the first two. Its main result was that it supported Story Champs because 3 of the 4 participants showed an increase in story grammar and 1 showed an increase in grammatical complexity and modifier use. However, it did not show efficacy in improving grammatical complexity, modifier use, or listening comprehension within story retells. So they overall said that Story Champs should be used as a small part and as an intervention plan and not the whole thing, especially with bilingual children with DLD. However, this was a small population sample, so results may be variable. And here are my references. Thank you so much.